Hey everyone, welcome back to the Good News Network. I am Michael Reynolds. This is my good friend and brother, Chris White. What's up, Chris?
Hey, I'm just excited about our conversation today with Susan. And
Yeah.
I had told her earlier that I'd had the chance to meet her several years ago, and I'm just so excited about this conversation. And
Yep.
yeah, how about you?
It's a good day, man. I've been enjoying my day. Looking forward to this conversation as well. Really glad you're joining us again. Just a quick reminder for those who maybe this is your first time joining the show, or maybe you haven't been around for a while, that we really just started this show in order to put a highlight on the good things that are happening in our community. And there's a lot of
Hmm.
sources of about other information and other news happening, but we really just wanted to focus on um, the good stuff that's happening around us. Chris and I have many conversations talking about people we know that are doing good work and good work that we've heard of, and we really just wanted to give a platform for folks to
Hmm.
share about that, so that you all can learn about it,
That's
be
right.
encouraged by it, get connected to it, support it, be involved in whatever way. So we're grateful that you're joining us today. Um,
Yeah, and
and
we just think the value added part of these conversations and the good work folks are doing is connection with those folks themselves,
that's
and
right.
letting people know, hey, this is happening, this is going on, and make these connections with each other, and
Yep.
so we hope that that happens as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great point. Thank you.
Hmm.
We like to start with the highlights. So what's something good that's happened for you recently, Chris?
Well, I tell you, the fall season is one of my favorite times of year, and a lot of it has to do with color. And I just, in a world that seems in chaos at times and just unexplainable things that are happening there, I just find the color of our world to be
Mm,
encouraging. And so, I love this time of year. I love the rain. I love walking after a rain and the
mm,
smell. But the other day, I had a chance to walk with my grandson in our neighborhood, and we just were noticing colors of trees. And we stopped for a minute, and he goes, "Red, red," and he just kind of gently touches the leaf that's coming off. And I just thought, that's so beautiful. I mean, literally, he's teaching me how to stop and see the
mm.
color, and we can always get so wrapped up in our agenda and our schedule and whatever, but just to take a few minutes and enjoy this beautiful creation around us, I'm really thankful for that.
That is so beautiful. Yeah, through the eyes of a child, man.
That's right.
What a great experience and what a great opportunity and blessing that you have to
Hmm.
spend so much time with him and be reminded of, how
Yeah,
beautiful our world is, because, it
that's
is
right.
easy to just get going through it and forget about it. So
That's
very
right.
cool, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. How about you,
Yeah.
brother?
Well, you may not know this, but I have a really, really good friend. His name's Chris, and occasionally we get together for coffee. And yeah. So I'm talking about Chris White for those of you who are not picking up on my humor. But this guy here, I tell you what, like this show came out of our conversations from
Hmm.
meeting with coffee, and then now,
Yeah.
we've both our schedules have kind of shifted a little bit, and so
Hmm.
we aren't able to meet as often as possible. But fortunately, today was one of those days, and I could tell you it is one of the biggest highlights of my recent past, to the conversation we
Mm.
had this morning.
Mm.
Just being around you, man. You are just such a blessing to me. I just
Oh,
can't tell you how encouraging you are, just seeing who you are and how you live life, and the
thank
opportunity
you.
to know you, and the way you're always present with me, and curious and interested in
Mm.
my life. And so,
Mm.
man, I love you and I really
Yeah.
appreciate you. So
Love you too, brother.
today was a beautiful time. So thank
Yeah, it
you.
really was so encouraging, and the feeling is absolutely mutual, brother. So
Yeah.
don't
Awesome.
take those times for granted that we can be together and just love each other unconditionally and just
Yeah.
support each other. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Well, before we
Hmm.
break into a chorus of Kumbaya, we better get our guest
Yeah,
in here.
that's
So,
right. That's right.
so we are super grateful to have Susan Ferren joining us from First Responders Resiliency. Susan was recommended to us by another one of our Good News Network podcast family, Adam Peacock. So, Susan, go ahead and join us here. There she is. Hey,
There's,
nice,
Hey,
good to see
hey.
you.
thank you. So great to be here. What a treasure to be able to be a part of this.
Oh.
Yeah, it's so great. Well,
Well, we're privileged to have you with us. Yeah. Go ahead.
totally we can only imagine how busy you are with the
Yeah.
work we're about to hear about, and we're really grateful that you're taking time to share this so others can learn about what you're doing. So
Hmm.
please tell us a little bit about yourself and any background you want to share, and then how you got into this first responders resiliency, and then we'll talk more about what the work is.
Terrific. Well, thank you. My background, from the time I was 18 years old in Santa Rosa, I was on the ambulances,
Hmm.
working as an EMT. And by the time I was 21, I was a paramedic in West Oakland. And I would
Oh,
spend my
wow.
entire career working in the Bay Area as a paramedic and eventually as a clinical manager. So that's sort of like a medical investigator. I worked for the fire departments and the private sector and helped them discover where educational opportunities were for paramedics and EMTs. And so I can
Hmm.
tell you that I was super grateful for that life. I'm also the mother of five that I
Oh, wow.
raised right here in Sonoma County, homeschooled our kids, four boys and a son. It's actually my son Matthew's 27th birthday today. So
Oh, wow.
Oh, happy
Wednesday, I'm
birthday,
celebrating
Matthew.
my son. So it's honestly, when I look back at my life and my career, I would have thought that I would have served in this industry and then retired, which is I think what my
Mhm.
real plan was.
Mhm.
But I got sick with kidney cancer in 2016. And
Yikes.
initially, it was a terminal diagnosis. They gave me a year to live. And
Wow.
they discovered when they did some scans on me that they initially thought there was a mass in my liver, not just my kidney. And it turned out to be a birthmark. And it's a shocking kind of a story, but they went
Ooh.
ahead and did open surgery on me, took out a portion of my kidney in that tumor. And 3 days after my operation, one of the surgeons just made this sort of offhanded comment. He said, "We see a lot of this in first
Hmm.
responders." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Organ cancer."
Wow.
And when I got home, I started looking just online. My first day home from the hospital, a week after my operation, I just searched organ cancer first responders. And I found a medical article talking about the correlation between the stress of our industry, much like
Hmm.
veterans, but you know,
Hmm.
some veterans obviously serve for careers, but many will go in for a tour
Hmm.
or two
Hmm.
and then be out, where most first responders, they'll go into this for a 20, 30-year career. Police officers, firefighters, it's not a temporary thing. And so I started doing this research, and one thing led to another. I was looking at organ cancer. I was looking at divorce rates. I was looking at isolation and depression. I was looking at substance use. I was looking at suicide rates.
Hmm.
After a year, there was so much information available online individually, sort of separately, but there really wasn't anything put together in advance of the work that we were doing. It was really what they were waiting for. I don't mean that to sound unkind, but traditionally in the industry, they wait until you're broken, and then they
Right.
offer you a
Right.
reaction,
Hmm.
Right.
medication, conversation, um,
Mm.
therapy. Those things, they can be good in their own right, but nothing was being done in
Hmm.
advance. And everyone showed that it was predictable. We would know by what people were going to be seeing, smelling, and hearing on a regular
Hmm.
basis that it was going to impact
Hmm.
them physiologically, not
Hmm.
just psychologically.
Yeah.
And after a year of doing that research, I was so overwhelmed and I would just call it a vision. I had a dream of
Hmm.
building a center for first responders and their families to help them avoid the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. And that is really the inception of the organization. I sold, with the
Hmm.
permission of the children, our home in Rohnert Park and used it for seed money to start the organization in 2018. And We trained 40 in 2018, and this year we've trained 13,000. So in 7 years,
Wow.
it has exploded underneath us in an effort to give first responders and their families tools to avoid the predictable symptoms of post-traumatic stress.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I am blown away. 13,000 people you've trained this year.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough. We got a multi-year contract with Cal Fire, which was early into the inception of the organization. They saw the need. And last year we signed a contract with the federal government. We went out and trained the US Marshals and the Capitol Police in Washington. So that was like never in my wildest imagination did I think I'd be doing something like this, but it does seem to have sort of a divine process going on here.
Wow.
Yeah.
And may I ask, what does that a snapshot of that training look like? I mean, I know that's a hard to say in a few minutes, I'm sure, but what's the mission with that training?
So the mission is really to provide education and information and training techniques that allow first responders and their families to mitigate the symptoms of
Hmm.
stress. And it's done holistically. And so what I mean by that is without having to be medicated. I say I'd rather have
Mhm.
meditation if we can than medication, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Stillness, right? There's this be still and know that I am God. But the other scripture that I think about is in quietness and rest is your strength, but you would have none of it. Well, those of us who are on this industry or on this job or in this industry, we often are very busy people, and stillness, especially self-care and stillness, almost seems selfish.
Hmm.
And so we're not there's
Yeah.
not really any conversation when we get into the industry about caring for ourselves. And there are some real physiological things that you can do that calm the nervous system. So a lot of what I talk about is what's happening to the physiology of the human body, your neuroanatomy, what's happening to your nervous system, what is nutrition doing to your anxiety and depression, what's happening when you're not present, right? You're not
Hmm.
aware and you're certainly not calendaring time for yourself. So, right, we can look at our own phones and we see how we've calendared a lot other people, other appointments, but no time to be alone.
Hmm.
And that stillness, I think, is very, it's why I can tell you that we're learning it now, that training people in these techniques, and they're all around stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system, getting them out of fight or flight,
Hmm.
some stillness, reducing inflammation and irritation in their bodies, which reduces the chance of organ cancer and anxiety and depression. And it's a human condition. I just happen to be a first responder who trains
Yeah.
first responders.
Wow.
That's
That's so
incredible.
beautiful. Wow. Hmm.
So I'm curious when when you started this after you did the search and saw the correlation between first
Yeah.
responders and organ cancer, how did you come up with this training? What was the process for like I this is what I need to do in order to support these folks?
Yes, it was very technical. I used butcher paper. And those huge Post-its that have the sticky stuff on the back side,
Sure,
I
sure.
stuck those on the family room wall. And I started looking, the first thing that I looked at was the neuroanatomy. How does the
Mm,
brain change structure and responses to an actual neuroanatomical changes? How was that affecting the way the first responder was psychologically? How
mhm,
did it affect the way they were emotionally? How did that affect their relationships? How did that affect their physiology? How did that affect their physical um, structure? And
mhm,
I literally had all of these butcher paper Post-its on the wall, and I'd written down all those different subjects. And then
mm,
I began to reverse engineer it. Well, if we know there's neuroanatomical changes, how do we stop those? Here's the
Hmm.
phrase I use.
mm,
If stress is the number one contributing factor to disease, and it is, then what's the number one contributing factor to reducing disease? Reducing
mm,
stress.
mm,
Hmm.
Most people will say, oh, you got to relax more, man. You got to get your stress out of your life. But there's no, like, okay, where's the workbook? Show me
Right.
mhm.
what techniques do I use to
Yeah.
reduce the stress? Um, there's a, and you know this, a big movement nationwide has been go to medication, silence
Hmm.
Right.
your voice. Don't deal with what's happening. Don't learn to calm it down. Medicate it.
Hmm.
And so I just am a firm believer that there are approaches that we can go to long before we end up having to medicate someone. Not that I am suggesting in the first instance that someone who's medicated and dealing with stress
Right.
shouldn't stay that way. They should.
Right.
But we try to train people these techniques that they can use and then see if we can get them some balance outside of
That's
just
right.
being constantly altered.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
Uh, that is so beautiful. And I love, I mean, simple, not easy, but the simplicity in what you did, just brainstorming like what are the issues here? I think, I've worked in behavioral health for a number of years, and I see so many things get caught up in convoluted processes that just go nowhere. We end up just talking about the problem all the time. And for you just to like sit in your house and come up with these ideas and like, follow the trail of what is this and boil it down to all of this is coming from stress, and how do we fix that, right? Like how can we
Hmm.
support that?
In today's economy, we can find this information. And,
Mhm.
part of it is, Michael, and that with the five people that I spend the most time with in our industry, all of us from the streets, the number of colleagues that we had lost was 56. And you
Oh
don't
my goodness.
find any other industry where five
Yeah.
people sitting together at a table can name 56 of their colleagues who have died from organ cancer,
Oh my
suicide,
goodness.
overdose. And I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting everyone's struggling with that. I'm saying
No.
Right.
there's a vast number of us who what we're trained to do is suppress it, right? Just move on. Because if you think about it, if you have a traumatic experience at a regular job, they're probably going to let you go home.
Mhm.
But a first responder, police officer, firefighter, paramedic, EMT, emergency room person, a dispatcher, they're going to have a crisis they're going to face at the beginning of their shift. And they're not going to get a break. There's no second string. You're not going to be
Yeah.
told that was really hard for you. You should probably go home now.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, what happens is you're on to the next one. And the patient that you're
Hmm.
seeing next does not ask you, what did you just go through in the last 6 hours? What have you been exposed
Yeah.
to? All they want is for you to be present for their emergency. And
Hmm.
so when you're being trained to constantly focus on the need of the people around you, guess what becomes the last on the list
Mhm.
is me.
Yourself.
So
Yeah.
Right.
our trademark is putting PTSD out of business. For first and foremost, post-traumatic stress is not a disorder; it's an injury. You don't have to be
Mhm.
medicated for life. You're not born with it.
Hmm.
And you don't have to get it. You can, I'm not
Mhm.
saying this is a cure-all, but what I am saying is that we can give people tools, information, science, and education that helps
Mhm.
them mitigate these symptoms and in
Hmm.
some ways recover from them if you have techniques that you can use. But we want to get ahead of people before they're in trouble because you know this. If you wait
Mhm.
until someone's traumatized to try to help them, you're behind the eight ball.
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
oftentimes, first responders come out of homes where there was some chaos. So
Hmm.
we learned early into our lives to manage chaos. And so, guess
Right.
what we do for a living? We manage chaos.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I'm curious about um what obviously you're training 13,000 people this year. There's a large support for this. And I'm wondering about early on, and there's a wide range of first responders. If so, I'm thinking specifically around law enforcement. I'm saying this from I went through the law enforcement chaplaincy training here in Sonoma County. I ended up not commissioning, but learned a great deal about much of what you're talking about now, the rates of heart disease and heart and all of the negative outcomes for this was law enforcement in particular, but you're talking about first responders in general. So and thinking about, as you were saying, like it's like, well, what did you expect? This is what you signed up for, right? Sort of that you just tough it out sort of thing. And so I'm wondering what the reception was like when you first
Hmm.
started down this track and started talking about ways to support this.
So the response, it's kind of interesting. I really conned people into the room. So hey, there's a new process out there, and I got the first 40 into the room in June of 2018. So I should say that 13,000 has been over the last 7 years, not just this
Mm,
last year. But
mm-hmm.
my favorite thing is going into a class and we just had our last conference last week. We had 57 clients in the room up in Healdsburg where we rent the Bishop's Ranch to do our trainings.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times at the back of the room, you've got everybody leaning back with their arms
Yep.
crossed because they're
Mhm.
like, oh, what's this lady going to tell me?
Mhm.
And we go straight to the science. I talk about everything
Mhm.
from, like I said, the nervous system and neuroanatomy and nutrition and exercise and cognitive behavioral therapy and all of the things that are affecting you physiologically. And you see them probably within the first 2 hours starting to lean forward. What?
Mm,
What? I'm like, yeah, this is what happens. And this is why you feel this way. And this is why you're feeling impatient. And this is why you're so frustrated. And this is why you come home and criticize your family. And this is why you can't sleep at night. And they're
Mhm.
like, what? What? And so we teach
mhm.
them all these techniques. And one of my favorite things now is that we often hear from people who show up because someone else referred them.
Yeah.
And they'll say, no, nobody would tell me what was going to happen. Now, we don't tell them to keep it a secret, but I think that they recognize that when people come in the door and they don't know what to expect, and I promise you that more times than not, including people who are watching this podcast or listening to it, will think to themselves, oh, I know what they do. No, you
Right.
don't.
Right.
You know
Right.
until you're there. And the beautiful thing for me is that it's not just that it's me. I had as I said, if God had asked me if I would be willing to start a program like this, I would have said yes. But if he told me it was going to cost me a house, a husband, and half a kidney, I would have said.
Oy.
And the reality is that
Mm.
most people are not aware of what's happening to them. And
Mhm.
the other part of it is that it's now all career first responders working with me. So we have police officers, firefighters, an emergency room physician, an ex-military guy. So all of our instructors, this is what makes it kind of a special package is we're all career first responders who are
Mhm.
subject matter experts in different areas. And so we all teach to these folks. And so they're hearing from their own folks, right? People from the
Yeah.
industry can speak to this. And now the universities have begun to take notice. So we're
Wow.
working
Mm,
with the director of brain research out of UCLA, who's on our advisory board. We're working with a
Mhm.
neuroscientist out of Canada and Loyola Marymount. I'm sorry, I always say this. My son went to Loyola Marymount, and I keep messing this up. Loma
Yeah.
Linda University
mhm.
in Southern California is doing a
Mhm.
longitudinal study on our work because they're all sort of amazed that I don't want to say it was a woman, but a woman in Northern California comes up with an
Right.
idea and
Right.
starts training these folks because just like you said in the beginning, every time I called an organization and said, what's being done? What could I
Mhm.
do? I was told, you can't do that. You can't do that. It
Mhm.
has to change. The DSM has to change. It has to change in
Mhm.
curriculum. It can't
Mhm.
be done that way. And I said, well, what if I just sell my house and start knocking door to door?
Mhm.
And they were like, well, that probably won't work. Well, it's working.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
working. Wow.
How
Wow.
beautiful. That is amazing. I love the what you said about they're hearing from their own folks, right? That peer-to-peer model. I've in the behavioral health I work in, peer support is particularly what I've done for the last several years. I'm now working in a different area, but that there is something about that when you're hearing from somebody who you know has that same lived experience that is much more meaningful.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to you talk about, the when they come in and they're like this and you start talking, I can imagine they're like, has she been watching me? Like, I mean, you're speaking into their lives, right? It's like, has she been reading my diary, right? Because
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
there's something powerful about that to realize. And I went through this. I'm in recovery, and I went through this in my own life. There was a point where I realized that my issue was not my issue. It was an issue that was common for other people, and that gave me a level of hope that I had no even dream that existed. And so I can imagine that they're hearing this and they've probably either consciously or subconsciously been thinking, this is just something I got to deal with. I can't talk about this. This is something wrong with me or something I just have to manage. And then they're hearing, oh, this is what this is. This is what this experience is for people that do this work. Um,
Mm.
I can imagine just the hope that brings to folks.
Mm,
And
You know,
and
the
and
most, yeah, the most common thing we hear, I've heard this probably 100 times is, where were you 20 years ago? Where were you
yeah.
20 years ago? I said, hey, I had to lose a kidney first. You got to give me some time to do that. And so there was this awareness that what we're doing, we're still recycling old tools, and I'm
Mhm.
by no means, like I said, I'm not. try and suggest that we shouldn't have options like peer counseling and options like therapy and medication. That's not suggesting those things don't play a role. What I'm
Right.
saying is they shouldn't be the only role, because you probably well know this, Michael. The one of the handicaps of the peer model is that oftentimes the peers are people who've already been traumatized. So they've got
Mm,
Totally. Yeah.
experience. Then they're talking to someone else about their trauma, and that fires off the mirror neurons in the brain.
Mm,
Well, that mirror neuron will release adrenaline and cortisol, or inspire that release of adrenaline and cortisol.
mhm,
And so the physiology is remembering the call. So it's not right. We know this through Bessel van der Kolk's work, The Body Keeps the Score,
mhm,
and Peter
mhm,
Levine's work, that
mhm,
its memories are not stored just in the human mind. They're stored throughout human tissue. And so we
mm,
Right.
have to recognize when we're creating opportunities for recycling trauma that both parties now have to try to release that from their systems. And so that's what we do, is we help people. I don't want to store that in my body. I don't want to store that in my body. I need to let go of that experience to the best of my ability. And sometimes that includes somatic therapy, which is what those are the experts that are really in that area. But
mhm,
we try to soften the soil so that
mhm.
people are open to other forms of assistance. But,
mm.
it doesn't, you don't have to dive too far or too deep to recognize there's more to the story than what we're being told today.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Totally. Wow. Thank you.
That's
Chris, please
beautiful. Yeah.
jump in. You have questions, comments?
Susan, one of the things that we like to give our guests an opportunity to explain is simply, what is your why?
Mm.
Why do you do this work? You've touched on it in some of our conversation already, but fundamentally, what is your why? What's your motivation to literally love your neighbor, to love your colleagues, to meet them in a place that builds a safe space for them to be real with each other and not to be afraid to be judged or whatever. So I'm explaining a lot, but what is your why, Susan? Why do you do this work?
I will tell you that I think the why it came from after I had gone through a lot of change in my life in a very short window of time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
I got critically depressed, and that was the first time
mm,
I'd experienced that. And it was a very challenging time for me. And in that window of time, I'd also lost a couple of friends. And I mean friends like former colleagues who'd either taken their lives or had died prematurely of disease in the last year and a half. After I was sick, I had one of the firefighters I worked with out of Petaluma had died of pancreatic cancer, and then one of my partners in Santa Rosa had died of pancreatic cancer. And
mhm,
this last July, my paramedic partner and one of my dearest friends died of Lou Gehrig's disease. And there were
Mm-hmm.
things like Chris, you asked about. Obviously the research showed me this. Gabor Mate's work on the myth of
mhm,
normal, talking about first responders and veterans
Mm-hmm.
having a 2.5 times more likely chance of getting Lou Gehrig's disease than civilians, and we're
mm,
40% more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty. And so I think, and I don't want to make this about me. I think though, when you suffer, you can see the suffering in the lives of others and you can speak to it, even if they're not necessarily in that space.
Mm-hmm.
For me to be able to say, hey, this may not be affecting you, but I promise you, you're going to work with somebody who it is. And
Right.
the tools so you, and I think, you
Mm.
sent me some questions, and one of the things that I think that brings me the greatest joy in all of humanity is seeing people who are compassionate and kind without an agenda. And when I mean without an agenda, today it's like social media is the whole thing, right? Oh, I want you to see me doing something good. So I'm going to videotape myself, or I'm going to hold a selfie stick, or I'm going to have someone else film me so you can see what I'm doing.
mhm,
And there's something beautiful when people do things simply because of the love of other human beings. And I don't know why. Honestly, if I look back, I think, what was I thinking? What was I
mhm,
thinking? I had no
Mm.
idea this would work. None. I cried myself to sleep more times in that first year after I sold my house than I did probably in my lifetime.
Mm.
So scared of what I'd done in an effort to do something like this. But it really comes down to the people that I worked with my whole life. They were just some of the most compassionate, caring, loving, self-sacrificing people. And
Mm,
of course, we're all imperfect and there are all sorts of shortcomings in first responders, just like in hairdressers and dentists. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just felt like somebody had to do something. And
mm,
my experience was not much was being done. And I just felt like I had to do something. And so
right.
now the reward is when you see people who say, oh my gosh, this saved my marriage, saved my life. I was going to take my life if this didn't work. I don't know that you ever need anything other than that.
No.
Oof. It's so powerful.
Whew.
It is incredibly powerful.
Mm,
Um, I'm thinking, I've heard you mention several times people taking their lives, and I also served on the Suicide Prevention Alliance in Sonoma County. And look, you talk about data, and one of the things we saw was that the highest rate of suicide in the county was white males 55 and older. And it was like, well, what's that about? Where's that coming from? And then as we started asking better questions and digging down on that, it became clear that it was law enforcement, and many of them were
Yeah.
former vet. It was first of all, the category came out, it was former veterans, but it wasn't right after they finished their duty. It was years later, and it's like, well, where's that? And so again, from doing the training with the law enforcement chaplaincy, I knew a lot of folks in law enforcement are former veterans. And so you compound whatever trauma happened while they were,
mhm,
serving their country in that way, and then decades of it, day in, as you said, I'd say off, like, nobody calls a police officer or an ambulance when something good's happening, right? They're the only
No,
reason you're
no one
showing
calls
up
to
is because
compensate.
there's a tragedy, right? There's something majorly stressful that no one else can handle, that they're being asked to step into. And so
Yeah.
I can tell you from seeing that data that the it is exponentially higher for law enforcement individuals than any other category. And there's a lot of focus put on youth suicide for good reason. We don't, I don't, obviously we want to support those folks, but if we're following the data, it is law enforcement that is dying by suicide at an
Oh,
exponentially higher rate
yeah.
than any other category of folks.
Yeah,
mm,
there is absolutely, and there's truth in that. Thomas Joiner's work looks at that. Also, I can't think of her last name now, but one of the gals who did a research project out of North Carolina on firefighters. We know that law enforcement have a higher incidence because there's a lot of anger towards them, especially
Mm-hmm.
after the incident with George Floyd, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course COVID. And
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing is, I would say that it's also very high in firefighters,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's hidden better. And I hate to say that
Mm.
because, there was a day that Suck It Up Buttercup was our wellness program
Right.
and
mm,
really had to stuff it down. But you remember, we're evolving, but the old school regime of 30 years ago is training the next generation who's training the next
Right.
generation. So we're still passing some of that,
Mm-hmm.
tough it out, suck it up, don't talk about it, drink it down. There are a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
that we say to make it okay.
mhm,
And, we've witnessed it here in our own county. In the last 5 months, we've had murder suicide. And it's just incomprehensible to me that we spend so much money training our all first responders how to protect their bodies and save other people's bodies and their structures. But we
Mm-hmm.
spend almost nothing on the most important piece of equipment they will ever have. And that's the part of them that lives inside that nervous system, brain, and spinal cord, and their families, right? Their
mm,
families are so, and this now, Mike, being involved in behavioral wellness, we now know that post-traumatic stress symptoms are contagious. So
mm,
when a first responder walks in the door and they've stuffed all this frenetic energy inside of themselves, and their loved ones say, "Are you okay?" And they say the same thing every time, mostly, "Fine, I'm fine." And
Mm-hmm.
it's a learned behavior, and I'm just trying to unlearn them. I'm trying to unlearn
mm,
them so that they can, like I said, reach out and maybe get some real access to support, but also to work on themselves and to do some things for themselves so that, the tragedy is, and one of the phrases I use is oftentimes we don't know someone's in trouble until they're on the back deck of their house with a bottle of whiskey and a handgun.
Yeah.
mhm,
And when you're there, it's going to be a lot harder to find a peer that you can talk to immediately and or call a therapist who's going to be available to you, especially if it's at 9 or 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday. And
mhm,
this is going to suddenly seem like this is a good solution. And what we want is for first responders everywhere to be able to say to themselves when they're feeling that overwhelm, that stress, that grief, that chaos that's playing in their heads. Oh, wait, I see what's going on. I remember this. I have
Hmm.
tools I can use. I can get myself out of this fight or flight response. I can calm down. I can slow down my breathing. I can do a couple of different techniques. And then I just need, they say the bridge between hope and despair is often a good night's sleep. And if we
Hmm.
can get people out of that crisis state when they're more likely to make a decision, especially if they're impaired, right? Bad decisions are easier to make when you're impaired, but there's still a lot of stigma around that. So we do a lot of
Hmm.
conversation around substance use and
Hmm.
inviting people to recognize that we take those substances because it calms the nervous system.
Right.
So if you're doing something that's working, then why is everybody making a big issue out of it? Well,
Right.
because it goes from being a help to a hindrance, right? It works until it doesn't.
Yeah,
You know that
exactly. Yeah.
programs.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing is recognizing that what I mean it's a coping solution, right? It's just not a long-term healthy one and not just
Yeah.
saying stop doing that, but you're giving them an option to replace it with something else that works that will bring them better outcomes in other areas of their lives as well, which is amazing. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and you just mentioned it, but that's I wanted to ask about the family. This is not just the individuals, right? This is the families and their kids and their communities, because often, I mean, a lot of these folks, it's a fraternity and a sorority, right? Like there's these close knit groups, and so I can imagine that this is helping to radiate out to make not only their lives better, but their families and their communities better. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if you have some stories around that of things you'd
Mm.
like to share.
Yeah, well, the divorce rate in first responder families is about 20% higher than the national average, which is already too
Mm,
high.
Right.
And we do have a training for the families. We have a family division that we train. And so when we do our big 3-day conferences, which are, I mentioned, held up in Healdsburg, when we host those
mhm,
conferences, on the third day, we bring families, so
mm,
partners, parents, grandparents, children over 14, spouses, and we train them in sort of a short course of what their first responder loved one is going through. Now, we
Mm.
don't do that to make the first responder family members do more work around the first responder because they're already having to
right,
sacrifice their
right.
life, their time, parenting alone, doing all the things, dealing with the
Yep.
stress that their partner comes home with, but we're teaching them the same techniques. So the same
Mm,
things we're giving to their loved ones, we're showing those in a short course so that when they go home,
mm,
they can speak to it together. And
Ugh.
we help them
brilliant.
recognize that, part of what I do really, my first love right now is neuroscience. How the human brain can be so maladaptive, which is we
Mm,
start making choices, especially, and you, I'm sure, are aware of this, that in men more commonly, when they're under stress, they will have risky and impulsive behavior without fear of consequence. And so
mhm,
this is sort of a traditional response that the human brain has. It'll look to distract itself.
mhm,
And it's not distracting itself with overtime, it's distracting itself with substances or hobbies
Hmm.
or new vehicles or an affair. And
mhm.
they often don't recognize this is not just because I'm a bad person in
Yep.
a bad relationship. It's that I don't know how to manage my life with this kind of stress. And how do I keep my loved ones connected to what I'm doing? So we really do try to help the families connect and learn about what's happening for both of them so that they have some healing tools. And of course, we
Mhm,
want to pass that to the children because if we're losing the first responders to this stress, and then
mhm,
their families are being torn apart by the stress, then you
Hmm.
have children being affected. And so you stop the bleeding. We stop putting a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed, and we start
mhm,
finding out where's the bleeding coming from and how do we
Mm.
stop.
mhm,
Wow.
mhm, mhm.
That's so beautiful. Wow.
Yeah,
I
just and yeah, go ahead, Chris.
no, I'm almost speechless, and I just I can't begin to thank you uh, for this work. And this term, I don't know if you've heard this term, Susan, vicarious trauma, but our society often tries to ignore it, right? Like, well, or self-medicate or whatever it is. And I can imagine that part of your work is building relationships with each other and truth and honest conversations. And again, not fearing being judged, but we love you and we want you to be healthy. We want you to live your best life
Yeah.
and use the skills that you are given, the great gifts of compassion and helping and serving people in our community. It's just a beautiful thing.
I like to say, Chris, thank you for that. That was lovely. Thank you for saying that.
Mm,
I like to remind people, right? If what we want is healthy communities, and that's what we want, that's why we're here
mhm,
talking about community, yeah? If what we want is healthy communities, then the people that we rely on to respond in an emergency, they need to be the healthiest of the people in our community. But they're like an afterthought. And Michael, you used a comment earlier that it was really relevant to what I hear a lot, which is, well, they should have known when they got into this industry what they were in for. No one knew. No
No
one
one
knew.
knows.
There's
Yeah, how
no,
could you? Yeah.
there's no book you're going to read. And oftentimes the first responders are still doing this thing where they're telling each other stories, right? The young kids are like sitting on the edge of their seats. Oh, tell me more trauma stories, not
Mhm.
knowing that it's setting them up to be damaged. And the older first responders sharing those stories is also traumatizing themselves,
Yeah,
not knowing, right? Because they're
right.
desensitized to it. So they
That's right.
think, oh, it's not affecting me. Oh, it's affecting you. You don't know it
Mhm.
here, but
mhm.
your nervous system is still playing a part. And I just believe that if we can create healthy first responders who know how to care for themselves, that's our internal mission statement is starting with ourselves, meaning I have to
Mhm.
do the work first. We train those who save others to save themselves. Now, if
Yes.
I have a first responder who walks in the room, they're grounded and well adjusted, they're mindful and they're present, they're not running on high energy, they're not running on a sympathetic response, they're not hypervigilant, startle responses way up. They're grounded and they're aware. It increases their reaction time.
Mm,
It allows them to hear without reacting, but to respond. So
mhm,
it
Oh, wow.
increases their intuition. And this allows officers, especially, to stay safer because they're
Mhm.
more present and they're more likely to respond accurately, effectively, and timely.
wow.
So, my goal, if we're going to heal the communities, is we're going to heal those who are saving the lives of our communities and protecting our property and lives
Mm.
so that we can be healthier as a community.
That's
Wow.
beautiful.
Part of that work,
That's
Susan, and I know I want to be respectful of your time, but is the Resilience Center,
Yeah.
and I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit because I know I've heard you even years ago. I heard you talk about the importance of having a place for people to meet together to support each other. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why it's so important?
I love that you asked that. Thank you so much, Chris. The truth is, when I first had this idea of building a program for the first responders, one of the things I recognized is that there's nothing for the first responder to go to today. Now, let's just
Mm,
talk about Sonoma County, right? One of my friends, Nisha Benedetti, said, we don't want to be the home of the Tubbs fire, which for a long time we were the only thing that had happened, and now we had everything else happen.
right.
Want to
Mhm.
be the home of the First Responder Resiliency Center. And I loved it when people said that they could see the value in this. And this is why I talk about this, and I'll tie this up to this. There are billions of dollars and thousands of organizations that serve veterans, which I'm so grateful for.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So grateful. Really, what's out there for first responders right now is drug and alcohol rehab centers for veterans and first responders, and
Mhm.
they offer some post-traumatic stress training. Now, of course, more places are starting to show up. But my dream was that we gave them a place they could go to, they could get the education and the training, they'd have access to the resources.
Mhm.
And I thought if we could have a place that they knew they could go to and they could get the help that they needed in real time,
Hmm.
competent therapists there in real time,
Hmm.
substance abuse, and it's all in one location. You don't have to go to 12 different meetings or 12 different doctors. You don't have to do all that in different locations. It's here for you. And we're all first responders helping first responders. And so I wanted to find a place to build a center like that. It had never been done that I knew of. And
Mhm.
4 years ago, we were able, through the gift of a miraculously generous person who owned the property that used to be the 9-hole Washoe golf course on West
Mhm.
Sierra and Katati, we were able to
Wow.
buy that. And we have spent the last 4 years preparing for the permit process. We're going through it right now. We just had our biological assessment.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a 20,000 square foot center for first responders and their families. They'll have access to real-time assistance and support. We'll have an equine center there, so they'll have access to nature. But it's
Wow.
a closed campus, a sanctuary, a self-care sanctuary for first responders and their families. And so my real thing
Mm.
now is I'm so busy out there training the first responders. I can't
Mhm.
do what a lot of hired guns can do, which is out there knocking on doors saying, please help us build this center. Please help us build this
Mhm.
center.
Right.
My dream is to get that center built. And if all goes well and I can raise the money, our hope is that we'll break ground next year and build the first center in the world for first
Wow.
responders in California.
Oh.
Well, that is a beautiful segue because the last question I want to ask you is how do folks get involved to either refer folks to this,
Hmm.
do the training themselves, and to support this incredible mission that I love the way you frame it in relation to veterans. It's not about, taking away from them. It's like that's a lovely thing. And there's this whole other overwhelming need that's being unmet. And so how can folks get in touch with you? How can they best support your efforts?
Well, the best thing they can do is go to our website, which is the word resiliency,
Mhm.
resiliency followed by the number one, st.org. So it's kind of a play on words, resiliencyfirst.org. And they
Mhm.
can also ask questions at info@resiliencyfirst.org. And
Mhm.
we have volunteers, so not everyone is in a position to help us financially. We understand that, and
Mhm.
I totally understand that. And this may not be their calling,
Mhm.
but having people volunteer to help us, setting up and breaking down for conferences and booths and getting the word out about our work, supporting our work so that we can scholarship first responders who maybe their department won't pay for them to come, maybe they're a
Yeah.
volunteer somewhere, and we get them scholarship to come to those conferences. But most importantly, once we build that center, we have a place to call home, and we don't have to travel all over the country, which is what we're doing now. We have a place to call home, and so do they. So
Right.
if people
Mhm.
want to know more about our work, that's the best thing they can do is go to resiliency1st.org. And then actually, I know that the North Bay Biz Magazine is doing a big spread on us in
Mm.
December, in their December
Oh.
magazine. And you may have heard that we just started working with the drummer of Def Leppard this year. He
I had
lost his
not.
arm in a car. He was 21. He's the
Yeah.
only one drummer in the world playing as a famous rock and roll band. And he and
That
his
was
wife joined our organization in January, and we do
wow.
drums that help with heart coherence at our conferences. So that's the Raven Drum Foundation
Wow.
with us.
That is amazing. Oh.
So cool.
Crazy
So
story. And I
cool.
thank you for letting me take so much time. I know you know how passionate I am about this, but it's
Oh
my
my gosh.
life's blood. It's just like it's everything I feel like I was ever called to do. Like every suffering, every experience, every good thing, hard thing, it
Mhm.
all brought me to this day. And
Mhm.
so I just can't, I can't stop talking about it and sharing the work.
Mm.
Well, I mean, there's passion and then there's selling your house. And that's a
Yeah.
whole nother level. I know a lot of people who are passionate about whatever has gripped them, but I cannot name anyone right now who has sold their house to make their vision, the vision that's been given to them, a
Yeah.
reality. And
Careful,
that
careful what
is
you wish for.
I don't think it's a prescription for everyone, and yet obviously it's clearly more than just a mission for you. It's your life, and I am just so encouraged and just in awe of this work. And living in Sonoma County and being involved in behavioral health, and I've done some training. I've heard about the first responders resiliency program, but I had no idea the depth and the breadth and the heart that is at the center of this. And
Mm.
to be able to sit with you, the heart of this program, and to hear these stories and to hear the trajectory and the reception and where this is going and the attention that it's getting now. I am really looking forward to this. Was it Loma Linda that's doing the long-term study?
Yeah, the
Yeah, I am
longitudinal
really looking
study.
forward. Yeah, I am really
Yeah, they're
looking
about
forward.
to do a peer-reviewed article on it because they've been able to show the dramatic changes that happen when people know how to care for themselves. And so, right, you don't give a man a fish, you teach him how to fish, and that's what we're doing. And I want to invite you and anyone who's listening to this, you can always reach out to us and come down and see the property. It's not
Yeah.
developed yet, but the office, you can see the structural design of what we're going to build at the center. So we want people in the community to feel proud of this. This
Yeah.
is their program. And long after I'm gone, there will be other first responders taking care of first responders.
That's right.
How we heal our own.
Wow.
Beautiful. It's
Wow.
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this. I mean, I have 1,000 other questions I could ask you, and I'm sure you have 1,000 other stories you could tell. One of the things we also like to do, in addition to folks talking about their work, is just, if there's something positive, a highlight in your life personally that you'd like to share with folks.
Mm. A highlight in my life personally. Well, I can tell you that obviously this work is, but my own personal joy is really in my kids. And I say
Mm,
that not like every mom on the planet, but my kids are grown now, but they have
mm,
supported this effort on my,
Mm.
I had to ask them for permission to sell the house. And
mm.
they said, yeah, mom. As a matter of fact, one of my sons
Uh,
said, what do you think God would have you do? And I said, oh, I
oh,
think God would have me sell the house. And he said, well, then he'll handle the rest. And it truly has happened that way. I know this is not necessarily a faith-based thing for everybody, but having my kids around me supporting this work and spurring
mm,
me on in my darkest moments, I would say is the greatest joy that you can have.
Mm.
wow, that's beautiful.
Beautiful
Thank
as
you
well.
so
Yeah.
much.
Mm.
I look forward to following this trajectory. I'm definitely going to be following more closely now that I have a better perspective of what's happening, and I'm going to be promoting this as much as
Come on
possible. And
down. Come see what we're
um,
doing. We'd love to meet you and see
Yeah.
you. And if
100%.
you
Yeah.
ever
Well,
come to an opening session of one of our conferences, we invite people who are curious about our work to come to the first 4 hours
Oh,
of our
wow.
conference to see what we do. And then we invite you to escape and
yes. Yes.
first responders.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I will be there. I will be there at some point. This is amazing.
We
And
need to schedule a field trip, Michael.
it's wait,
Yep.
I'll check the budget, but we're in.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
yeah. Well, you spend a
No,
lot of
this
our
is
money
great.
on the green room, so
Yeah.
yeah,
No, this is amazing. We'll put all the contact information in the show
yeah,
notes so folks can get
Thank you.
connected. And when this, we would love to have you back later on as this evolves, and particularly, as maybe at the groundbreaking or the opening cert, whatever that is, at some point we want to continue to follow this work, continue to promote it. And so thank you. I mean, I knew you were a busy individual, but hearing of all of this that's going on, I am truly grateful that you made time to share these stories with our folks.
Well,
And
I love what you're doing. I love that there's good news. We all have enough bad news.
Hmm.
And I
yeah,
just think that there's so much more for us to be learning about each other and how
Hmm.
we can thrive as a community. So it's just an honor to be here and an honor to do the work. And thank you for giving me the chance.
Well,
no,
thank
it's our
you. And I
pleasure.
just want to say quickly, from the bottom of my heart and with the fullness of my heart, I thank you for being the person with the hands and feet to love our community.
Oh,
And it's sometimes easy to write a check or do that, but to get into the work, and it's not always easy, and it's I know, like, but thank you for loving our community as much as you do.
no,
Mhm.
my honor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
yeah.
I don't know that I would have picked this path, but now that I'm on it, I'm staying the course.
Once you're there, right?
I'm here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Susan. Again, we'll put all the information in the show notes, and we'll definitely be in touch. You will be seeing us in person at some point
Good.
at the sessions and for a tour and all of that. And so,
Yeah,
thank you again for making the time. We greatly look forward to following this trajectory and celebrating future successes with you. Please reach out if there's ever anything we can do to support.
absolutely.
Get the word
All
out.
right.
Okay.
We will.
Thank
It's
you.
happening. We will. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right.
All right.
Thank you,
We'll talk
Susan.
to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.
Goodness gracious, Chris. I mean, this is why we do this, right? This is why we do this because
That's
I
exactly
mean,
right.
we live in this county and this is happening. This is a nationwide thing. I mean, she just talked about being in Washington, D.C. and presenting and
Hmm.
sharing in these statewide universities that are taking notice. And this is in our own backyard, man. And
That's right.
I mean, I work in behavioral health and I'd never, I mean, like I said, I'd heard of it, but I had no idea the depth and breadth of this organization. It is unbelievable. It really is unbelievable.
And I am privileged in my life to have some close friends who are first responders and law enforcement and other things. And I I know now that there's a place to get support, a place to get help, and I'm going to let them know, and they can let their colleagues know, and there are people in this community that do selfless acts of love and want, again, like I said before, want you to live your best life, and the way God intended it, and without, and in a world that's ever more being isolated from each other, Susan is taking the opposite approach. We're bringing people together for real, honest, transparent conversation about
Yeah.
struggles and all of that. And you're not alone. You said it earlier in our conversation, when you realized I'm not the only one that's struggling with
Yep.
this, and so when you can bring people together that way, and take away the stigma, uh,
Yep.
perhaps shame,
Yep.
that we develop in our life, can develop, and here's a place that says you need to let that go. You need to let that go, and we're here for each other. So,
Yeah.
wow,
It's so beautiful. And that, that as you were talking, I'm thinking of that, you can't heal what you don't reveal. And so for her to be, and this organization to be providing a platform for folks to come together and have revealed what the science says, what is actually happening. I know what my experience is, but what's actually happening, and to have that hope that there's a way out of that, a healthy way out of that, not just a way to cope with it, and that's going to create, just push the problems down the road
mm-hmm.
and make them grow, but to find a way to mitigate those now and long term. It is incredible work. I am so grateful that we were able to hear this story today. And
Hmm.
again, all the information will be in these notes, and we highly encourage you all to learn more, find out, just learn more about what's happening. And I think just the awareness of what these folks go through, right? Just the stories we heard
That's
today
right.
of hearing, just hopefully that will bring another level of appreciation for these folks when they show up, or when we see them in public in their uniforms, and just
Mm-hmm.
being able to just say kind words to them and thank them for their work, and just remind them that they are appreciated. And yeah, it's
And it makes me
amazing,
wonder and
amazing.
think, there are a lot of professions, public service professions and things like that, where there is these massive amounts of vicarious trauma. And this model is saying, you know what, there's a positive way to work with that,
Yeah.
and to give people the space, a safe space to say, I'm struggling and I
Yeah.
need some support. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that hope is one of the most valuable assets we can ever have, and I hear that
that's right.
100% through everything she shared. It's so beautiful. So,
Mm,
well, I thank you all for joining us today. So, Chris, as we transition out of this session, it's really hard for me to transition because I'm just so overwhelmed with all this information and
mm-hmm.
the beauty of it. But looking forward, and in your life, what's coming up for you that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'll tell you immediately, I'm looking forward to this Saturday. And you know what this Saturday is, our monthly men's breakfast. And we've been doing this for years. We have a band of brothers, if you will, of seven of us who meet once a week. We meet and talk together, but once a month we see each other face to face and have breakfast and share a meal. And it's a place where I would pray that everyone has an opportunity to have a group of people around them that you can trust, that will love you unconditionally, and find joy in life and just in the smallest things. And so I look forward to that breakfast. I always do, but I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be with this band of brothers. And your support in my life has been immeasurable. So
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's it. We are very fortunate, man. It is there's I've don't know too many people that have been able to have that level of connection consistently over time with such a consistent group of guys who are
Right, right.
focused on loving each other and trying to, just improve our paths in lives. So yeah,
That's
that's
right.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
How
always a
about
good
you,
time.
brother? What are you looking forward to?
Well, also this Saturday, I uh, I I shared with you this morning in our coffee session, but I've met a woman that getting to know each other and starting
Hmm.
to um, grow together. But she lives north of here about an hour and a half, and there's a once a year up there they have what's called the harvest dance, and it's at the local
Hmm.
grange, and so it's going to be a
Oh,
little bit of a hoedown, I think. And
yeah.
I am super looking forward to it. For those of you who have watched for a while, I love to dance, I love music. And so to do that in a in a just a small community environment, a community based event, with someone that I'm starting to live life together with. It's going to be a lot
Mm-mm.
of fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm sure it'll be a sweet event with a lot of laughs and smiles. So yeah, that's
Have you
what I'm
been
looking forward
practicing your square dance moves and things like that,
to.
brother?
I never was very good with geometry, my friend, but I'll do my best.
Oh, okay.
I do more
That's all
trapezoid
right.
dancing, I think, but
It's
all
okay. It
right.
all comes from
Well,
a place of joy, right?
that's right. That's right. All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us. Thank you again. We're so grateful for Susan Farren joining us from First Responders Resiliency. Please learn more, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. In the meantime, keep
Hmm.
looking for the good. And Chris, if we aren't able to find some good, what should we do?
Well, brother, I think we should go make some good.
Hey man, sounds like a
Go
brilliant
make
idea
some
to me.
good. Right,
All
right.
right. Thank you all. We love you all. Thanks for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.